Are we recording?
Yes, we're recording.
Or 5 seconds? Jen, it's so good to see you.
Oh, Monica, I miss you.
I miss you too.
I'm glad we're
But
back.
we're coming back. We're coming back March 4th.
Yes.
And we have a lot of fun things that are going to happen this year, despite what you're reading in the news. We're going to bring
Mhm.
really cool people to you with great solutions. And so we thought we would
Absolutely.
just talk a little bit about like how does biophilia fit into the turbulent times of today, and all the great things that are happening, what discoveries are going on. Maybe this is sort of, Jen, like a state of the state
I
episode
like,
to kick off this.
yeah, I like that idea. And I think this is a great idea to do this. And for Katrina and the three of us to kind of come together and say, we really need to just kind of have a conversation, kick off the
Mm-hmm.
season of, okay, why are we doing this in the first place? What does biophilia
Why are we
mean?
doing this?
Why are we doing
Why
this?
are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Because we want to
It's so
share
good.
great,
I know.
great ideas and solutions. We believe in nature. We believe in community, right? And I
Hmm.
think, Jen, I've really been thinking a lot about when we launched this.
Hmm.
And it was in time of crisis. It was during COVID. And
Absolutely.
I couldn't put my finger on it until just maybe this week. And we're recording this like at the end of February. I feel like that's where I am. Like it sort of feels like the beginning of COVID. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of change.
Hmm.
There's a lot of questions. Some
Yeah.
people are happy with the change and some people aren't. I don't want to say anybody was happy with COVID, but it was just sort of a mixed bag. What
Yeah.
What do you think?
It was certainty. And I feel like that's exactly like you're saying. We are in the middle of mass uncertainty, and every day is something new. And it's disheartening and discouraging. So I always feel like our conversations are around hope
Hmm.
because nature is hopeful. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we're doing what we're doing, is to kind of lead with why biophilia matters, just like it did in 2020. It matters now to really address these things like politics, climate change, technology, human health. I mean, we can go on and on and on because nature touches every aspect of what we are, who we are, and how we exist on this planet.
And I found that every time we got off a interview,
Hmm.
um, whether, you're like running, you're doing a million things, you're like, oh my God, we have an interview, we got to do it. I always left like better. I always left
100%.
inspired and more curious.
You know
So
what? Wait a second, Monica. I love because there's so many times where I just want to text you and Katrina right after our interview and say, that was so great. Oh my God, that person was so wonderful. So, like, you're right, because the guests always make me feel so good after we have come, because I learned something new. I feel like we
hmm
all do. And it's not just the listeners are learning something new, we're learning something new. And then we get to share it, amplify their
hmm
work and their knowledge. And that makes us all better equipped to have a toolkit that will maybe address some of the things that we need to have to really help us go through
hmm
these uncertain times. So I'm in the same exact boat. I get so excited. I'm like, I want to keep talking to these people for hours.
Okay. Yeah, no, totally. And so I think one of the things that we've been talking about for our listeners is like, kind of what does biophilia mean in a broader sense? I think we maybe the past 4 years are really sort of introducing it to the listener or broadening their interest in definition and bringing people that maybe they didn't know were doing interesting things. And so I think we need to continue having this paradigm shift. As we say, reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with each other and communities. After COVID, really people thought we needed a quote reset and a refocus. And I think we can think about that as sort of not to be too, but like maybe a life philosophy, right? That's a
Yes.
very hopeful life philosophy. And I know we have a friend here in Serenby who is like an absolutely brilliant lawyer who is now retired and is writing this like wild newsletter called Hybrid Intelligences or Hybrid Intelligencer. But he wrote, and we all read it, a super cool piece. Biophilia discovers its missing father. And I think that was one
Mm,
area I wanted to start is that we talk a lot
yeah.
about E.O. Wilson,
Yes.
who really was somebody who we talk about sort of popularized the term biophilia, who was an anthropologist and studied ants and sort of understood the concept of biophilia and the need for nature and the connection to it for all living things. But John Neiditz, who wrote this piece on LinkedIn, and we'll put it in our show notes, I'd love to hear people's thoughts, is he really is bringing it back to Fromm, who was a psychologist, and really his concept was not exact, it wasn't just the natural affinity for nature, but really, thinking of it more as spiritual, cultural, social orientation that's rooted in critical theory and critical thinking. And so I think we're going to dig into that a little bit more. I know you and I talked, like, it's more than design.
Yes.
It's more than architecture.
A lot of people are very interested every time we talk about design and architecture. We'll keep a very big, part of it. But
I think you're right. That for sure. We'll keep talking about city planning and buildings and bringing green in, getting out in nature. But what if we're looking at it as sort of a broader contextual philosophy? And, we've always said, like, you've joined the biophilic movement by just stepping in and having being part of the conversation. So that's something I wanted to just put out there. And I don't know what you think about it. I don't know where your head is after 4 years of playing in the sandbox, Jen.
You're right. It's for me, it's a very spiritual practice. It's understanding what it means to me at this moment in time, like what biophilia is for me. I mean, we all know what it does, but, scientifically speaking, what it does, but like spiritually, and how do I feel when I am like Mary Oliver amongst the trees, or, or uncertain aspects of like what makes me feel good in times of trouble, and how do I bring nature, a part of that, into my being and like my daily life, so I can have that practice of saying, I'm thankful for today, I'm grounded in it, and I'm, biophilia is bringing me closer to human spirit. And I think that's what we're kind of missing, because we're so detached from our own selves. Like we're looking at the news 24/7. We're not even like looking at our own bodies and our own health. I think we're so focused on what's happening around us because it's kind of scary. So we need to then recenter the focus to us and how we feel in this moment.
Well, and I personally want to recapture my own attention. You hear me talk a lot where I'm like, between like rage and fear and stress, trying to juggle all sorts of things. And I feel like my attention is captured. And that might even be a passive way of saying it, because I own my attention. We all own our attention, but we give away our attention so much to social media. So I'm trying to really think about my relationship with that and how I can utilize it in a different way. I don't want to say for good, but I just think technology has not saved us, but I want us to think about what are the technologies that could save us, right? So I don't want to say this is bad and this is good, but think about it in a more nuanced light.
That's what you always do, Monica. You're really good at that, because we never want to frown upon anything. We don't want to put like a negative light on something. It's more of like an understanding or an awareness, so that you can choose for yourself if technology is too much for you, or maybe not. So I think it's important that we just kind of share what we're sharing and talk about it broader.
Well, and somebody said to me the other day, I was having lunch with a woman who's a filmmaker who works a lot with refugees, and she is, in the turbulent times, or somebody said this is a very dynamic time. Artists see around the corner, and I don't know who to attribute that to, but I think there's a storytelling and a myth making that America or the world, we sat around fires and told stories, or there was Greek mythology, and we still have myth making. And so how can we be a place for hopeful content, but that's not too sappy? Like, it's really honest and has a reality check, but we're thinking about how we can, myths are being broken right now. And so how can we share the future stories?
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Maybe I like that
new tagline, or
something like that. But we want to address the technology. And also, I think about this a lot because my background was in retail. and selling products. And
Yeah.
how do we look at overconsumption, especially in the US?
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's abroad. It's globally, but a lot of it is in the US of the
Mm-hmm.
overconsumption machine. So how do we kind of
Mm-hmm.
think about that and that relationship with nature as well? Like, how do we think about how we're, I don't want to say plundering or taking, but it's also like the awareness of what are we doing to the planet when we're buying all these things that we're buying.
Yeah. And we, the greater we, but I include myself, tend to just keep going.
Yeah.
Right. We
Yeah.
just keep going. We keep going. We keep going. We keep buying. We keep buying. And like, when is enough? Like,
Yeah.
and the culture tells us to keep doing that. Right. I mean, you get on your Instagram and it's just
ad after ad after ad.
Yeah. And so, I don't have an answer there, but I think, yeah, what are those solution oriented? It always struck me, Jen, and I think I've said it before on the podcast, when you've taken photos of the streets of New York just the day after Cyber Monday, Tuesday,
Oh, yeah.
just filled with trash. And
Mm-hmm.
like, what are we doing? And I think there's a question of, what happens when we stop?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the wildfires, I grew up in California and very close to Altadena and the Palisades, and I have a lot of friends who lost everything. And I think that it's devastating, but it's really reframed, maybe just momentarily for the people that weren't involved. But I think we should think about that what was all that stuff? And so much of it is precious, memories and things that you can't replace. But, did I need that third pair of black pants or, whatever? I don't know. So really thinking about what are some solutions, where are some movements where we can sort of jump in and reconsider, that instant gratification that, oh, I'm going to hit buy and it's going to be on my doorstep in an hour or, and some of it's fabulous convenience and some of it's amazing for people who maybe don't have the ability to get out of their house, but some of it is just way too frictionless.
Well, and there lies in the problem. I'm so glad you said that because you're right. I'm thinking about, and I don't want to age ourselves or anything, but you think about like years ago, we have, a radio advertisement, a TV advertisement. We have to pick up a newspaper or magazine or drive by like a billboard. But now it's like, it's continuously, we're being bombarded. Exactly. Yes, I know. As Monica's showing her phone. Yeah. I mean,
it's just like easy peasy.
Constant.
Everything's saved.
Yeah. So we're getting bombarded. So that's the hard part too, is that technology is giving us these ads 24/7 thrown in our face. And then we're dealt with the overconsumption aspect because we shouldn't be buying, but we're, being lured to buy 24/7. So it's this constant, like, what should I be doing?
Well, and it would be interesting to interview somebody that really understood the psychology or the anthropological, because, we're hardwired to gather and hoard things because of future scarcity.
Exactly.
So how do we break that down and sort of maybe break that addiction? I'm really also really interested in AI and where that's going, what that means. Maybe, or I shouldn't even say maybe, I'm sure that there's going to be phenomenal breakthroughs in research that can be done. So who's working on that in nature-based solutions in biophilia? So we want to dig into that. Not only disconnecting from technology, but how can we harness it and just use it in a more intentional way?
It's the greatest word. I know, Monica, I always think about you and we think about like, how are we using our words and how do we think about how important words really are, because people say things all the time and they're not really thinking about what they're saying, but the intention behind what we say. And then think about how are we framing conversations to make sure we're putting the solutions with what we discuss, especially nature-based solutions. And that's what Biophilic solutions are all about, nature-based solutions.
Yeah. I think the other thing, which you do in your day-to-day all the time, and, I guess I sort of live in the embodiment of it, is just like building community and getting out in person, right? In this sort of divided world, if you will, we don't need to be neutral. We can have opinions, but we should hear people out. We should
Yeah,
have conversations and we shouldn't be having them online. I mean, don't get me
exactly.
wrong. I'm like slightly obsessed with Blue Sky right now and I'm like in there like going to town. But I really have been heartened to have some like hard conversations with people. And it can move us both into a more empathetic place. And I think, with everything that's going on with DEI, that really came to the forefront in 2020, right? Now it is being dismantled. And then there's sort of this corporate divide, even of some are and some aren't keeping it. I really wish we would just stop using the word almost because I think it's been co-opted. I saw they got rid of their DEI page and then they opened up an office of collaboration. And I thought that was great because it's like, okay, fine. You hate these words. You don't want these words in the government. And then you don't want them. You can't have any nonprofit using those words because the grants will get torn away. Yeah. Can we use something that won't be stolen, like empathy or collaboration? Like those are, I thought with diversity, equity, and inclusion were positive words. And maybe we need to use those instead of the acronym, right? So we're really getting to the heart of it. Because if I say those words to you, it's much harder for anybody to say, oh, yeah, I want to get rid of inclusion.
Absolutely.
That sounds terrible. But DEI has become another, woke word or whatever. So I've really been thinking about empathy. Like, how can we have empathy for other people who are in other situations? Because we all live in our own little bubble and we create our own little bubbles with the technology. The part of that's getting out of the room, getting out of the phone, and really thinking about what you can do on the ground and in your backyard, in your local area.
And there's so much we can do. Yeah, I think that's exactly it's like, how do we show up as better humans for ourselves and for our families and communities and work? I mean, that's the key thing. And give ourselves grace during all this too, because it's not an easy time. But I think we always lead with hope. So how do we teach that?
Well, another thing, Jen, I want to talk more, and we know we're interviewing some people about talking about nature and cycles and the rhythms, right? And how again we talked about earlier, like consumption tends to be this, or even corporate America or capitalism is like this linear, go 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 go, oh my God, more. And thinking about things that are cyclical, whether that's the seasons or just a new way of thinking about how we live our lives. I know you went away to help your mom for a few weeks. Was that good to sort of get out of the New York bubble, if you will? Like, how was that for you?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it started when I went to Ireland in the fall after my uncle passed away. I was able to then go to Ireland. And that was like a celebration of his life and my family heritage and going back to like our indigenous roots of, they were tribes. So the tribal nature of, we go back to the 1300s. That's as far back as we can find our one side of the family, at least. And then I was so excited by that and learning about, I already knew, but I was able to dive deeper into it when I was in Ireland and go to see my family, my parents in Florida was really nice because I got to talk about it more with them and spend time and look through pictures and have actual conversations about like the indigenous wisdom that our family knew about hundreds of years ago in Ireland and then brought it to New York. And it was like a really nice celebration of actually beauty and nature and all the things I love, because my parents also live on this beautiful lake in Florida and they call it their nature preserve. And we looked at like eagles every day, and my dad would point out certain animals, and it was a really glorious time. So thanks for asking.
No, I just think if you can get out, whatever that is, maybe it's just visiting a new town in the state you're in, if you can, get to Europe. But I do find that any kind of travel, and again, that could just be the neighboring town, can help change perspectives.
100%.
Or provide perspective. And that's one of the things I've been thinking also about is consciousness. And I think that back to sort of nature and rhythms, what's sort of the, what does that mean? Like I've been, a friend of mine's really interested in physics. And so we're talking about reading a book together. That's sort of I can't remember the name of the book, 6 Wonders of Physics. And I think consciousness and the connection to the universe, is also an interesting, like what is consciousness and how do we get there? And does it help to
Mm-hmm.
spend time in nature or, be exposed to awe experiences like we've talked about in the past?
Yes.
And I think that goes also to indigenous wisdom. I'm sort of fascinated by the idea of, do we hold that wisdom inside of us
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in our DNA? Sounds kind of
Yeah.
wild that we'd have ancestor wisdom, but that's interesting to me too. So I'd love to talk to
Yeah.
scientists about that as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's I'm very intrigued by this, our cultural heritage, where we come from and how it
Mm-hmm.
forms our DNA, or is it sitting in our DNA of our years and years and hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows how, your lineage, because I think it's really interesting, and how does it tie back to how we live today and what we like and what we
Mm-hmm.
don't like, and it helps us learn more about ourselves, I think. So I think I'd rather spend more time learning about my own history than some random person on the internet, you know?
Right. We
It
do.
doesn't
We
help
get
me.
so sucked into this sort of
Yeah.
influencer celebrity culture. I know you had said to me
Yeah.
there's sort of a trend happening, the anti-influencer. Tell me more about that, because I think I'm fascinated with that. Like,
Yeah. I
I'm a
know too
little
much
tired
more
of all
than
those.
me
Yeah.
too. And I don't want to be sold something every day by people all the time that I know a little
Mm-hmm.
bit or know a lot or don't know it. I think I'm just so tired of being sold to all day
Mm-hmm.
long. And that's
Mm-hmm.
happening. And that influencer culture is just kind of like people are just selling stuff constantly instead of having
Mm-hmm.
real, authentic conversations that are meaningful. And
Mm-hmm.
that means something to them, even whomever that influencer might be. But I think people are really kind of getting tired of just, I don't know, just not real. And it's just kind of, doesn't really help me any. I don't want what they're selling.
Mm-hmm. I've been trying to read. I think, again, I've done it to myself over the past couple of years with social media. I've stopped reading longer format. I've been trying to read books, but I just have been not reading that longer
Mm-hmm.
format Vanity Fair article or The Atlantic. And so I've been trying to do more of that lately, to like sit and spend
Yes.
a whopping 30 minutes reading an article. And one of them was sort of a little bit of like, how did we get here with social media? And if you think
Interesting.
back, when we first had it, it was just
Mm-hmm.
a linear timeline.
Yes.
Whatever you posted, your dog or your baby or your whatever, I guess your lunch.
Your breakfast.
Um,
Yeah.
and then it started, and then they introduced like, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it was shares, but they introduced these other tools to create quote unquote engagement. And that's when sort of the influencer culture created, because I suddenly wasn't seeing yours or Katrina's or other people, my family's
Yeah.
timeline. I was seeing these people that I don't know. And then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly everybody needed to compete for
Yes.
attention. And then it became the brand. Like you and I struggle with that
Mm-hmm.
all the time, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't want to be a brand. I mean, I'm a
Exactly.
brander, but that's not
Yeah.
my goal. But at the same time, I want to share
Mm-hmm.
ideas and experiences. I don't need, to the like drive to have 1 million followers seems to have been this huge goal. It's really tough. And you're like,
Yeah.
where is the sort of slower, intentional, value oriented mindset that I think
Yeah.
we're trying to bring here on Biophilic Solutions? And hopefully, we're bringing you a lot of people that maybe don't even have social media, that you wouldn't really
Absolutely.
find unless you were deep into that area. So that's something also. I'm not sure
I
how I
like
got
it
onto
all.
this lane here,
No,
but
it's all
I'm going to
good.
find that article and we'll put it in the show notes, because it was like, oh, this explains it. I
Interesting.
don't know about you, but if I start to understand it, that helps me so much
Yeah.
process.
It helps
And
me so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
The more we
one
read,
of the
the more we learn.
one of the other kind of last things, I don't know, I'm just sort of rolling along here, is like, what is a biophilic future? What does that look like, Jen?
Mm. Well, there's so many
No wrong
elements of
answers.
that, Monica. What does biophilic future look like? I think we're getting there. I think I'm so proud of the work that we've done the past 4 years, because again, I remember posting a question during COVID just on my social media, just saying, does anyone know what biophilia is? I had around 2,000 people respond. And I think 16 or 13%, something like that, knew what biophilia was. And I think, oh my gosh, look where we are now. And there's an awareness and there's an interest and an intrigue. And it's not just like small, it's like big, like city planning. It's school systems. It's, like think about Serendipity, and you guys are exploding. Like, people just want to be there because of the connection to people and nature. And I think there's such beauty in that, of just understanding of people want to be healthier for themselves, for their family, their community. And when they do those micro things, then it kind of is that ripple effect, because then someone else is learning about it. And then you think, wow, I can do that at home. I can do this. And I think there's a lot that's happening that's going to just keep going and ramping up.
Yeah. And I think back to that. Gosh, was it back when we started in 2021 when Florence Williams was here and Liz Calabrese, right? And those early conversations about how do we build a movement. I think we were talking about like calling ourselves the Biophilic, might have been the Biophilic bitches, but or the Biophilic babes. I can't remember. We were kind of like just fooling around, and I was like, I don't want to like turn it into this negative or turn it into the, like I want it to be all inclusive. But I just think finding community, finding allies, finding curious people, hanging out with curious people who want to ask questions, challenge things, creating hope, be reimagining in a future, and really thinking how we center nature and center humanity and humans.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's
right.
It. Centering humans and humanity, and not just.
Well, and that's a lot of the work you've been doing recently around what is human? What is the art of being human?
Yeah. I think we not that we lost it, but I think that again, that connection of when we think about nature, we are all interconnected. So we can't lose that aspect of nature, because then we lose ourselves. So we have to refocus that center of nature.
I like that.
And then everything else, then we are all connected together, and to the experiences of what it means to be human, and to experience beauty and heartache and love and so many different things, and joy. So I think nature is that conduit to a better understanding of how we can live in harmony with the natural world, and then with ourselves, and then with those around us.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing I want to do is just state here, and we'll formalize it maybe as we launch, but how do we bring the listener in, right? How do we, I know how we can, but I want to be intentional and really open up channels to a broader conversation, to really ask the listener for ideas and feedback. Who do they want to hear from? Who are they curious about? Who are they reading about that they want to know more? They want to hear a conversation with them. So I think we're going to we'll put our contact in the show notes. But I think that would be really meaningful for me.
I agree. We want to hear from all of our listeners. What do you want to hear? Who do you suggest that we interview this year, and why? And are there any hidden gems out there that we might not have found or heard about? Because I know there's lots of them. So we want everyone's feedback. We want interaction this year with our favorite listeners, and those that do listen and share our work, which we always so appreciate. It means so much to us.
Yeah. And we'll open up probably a Substack and get the podcast on there, and then maybe reformat it and start to ask some questions to get some engagement, because I think there's some really interesting people out there doing great work. And I would also love that as a tool to amplify their great work that they're doing and really share all these wonderful, this evolution of biophilia. So Jen, I'm really looking forward to this season this year. I hope you are too.
I am too, Monica. I'm so thankful. Katrina is with us, and we're building this great arc of interesting stories and information that will hopefully make people feel better about themselves and what they're doing, and just to be aware. And that's exactly, just being aware of what's going on is another big part of it. So it's pretty cool.
So everybody, we're back. This was our first episode. We're gonna get you an interview in our next one, and much more. And really really want to hear from you guys. What do you want to hear? Who do you want to hear from? What were some of your favorites? And we just want to thank you
Yes.
for all the time you've given us. And it's going to be a great 2025 with Biophilic Solutions.
Agree. See you soon, Monica.
Thanks, Jen. See you later.